460.
Oh, you mind picking a different one?
Pardon?
You mind picking a different one?
No, I don't mind.
Yeah, please. We don't sing that one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Let's see. But I'm happy today. 251. Regardless of the
That's good.
rain, I'm still happy.
251?
251.
251. Thank you.
251.
Randy, will you open us with a prayer after this song? Are there any other announcements? I know we kind of been talking about a little bit of everything, but no, that just about does it. Before we get started? Yeah? Okay. All right.
I'm happy today, oh yes, I'm happy today, in Jesus Christ. I'm happy today, because He's taken all my sins away, and that's why I'm happy today. I'm singing today, oh yes, I'm singing today, in Jesus Christ. I'm singing today, because He's taken all my sins away, and that's why I'm singing today. I'm praying today, oh yes, I'm praying today, in Jesus Christ. I'm praying today, because He's taken all my sins away, and that's why I'm praying today. I'm living today, oh yes, I'm living today, in Jesus Christ. I'm living today, because He's taken all my sins away, and that's why I'm living today. I'm happy today, oh yes, I'm singing today, in Jesus Christ. I'm praying today, because He's taken all my sins away, and that's why I'm living today.
All right, Randy.
Our Heavenly Father, thank you for letting us come together tonight to study your word. Please let us retain some from tonight and apply it to our lives. Please go with those that are sick and help them get better. Please go with us through this week. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen.
Thank you. All right. Well, good evening. Historical review, textual review, and then that's where I have designed to stop tonight, as to not do what I did with Hosea and go too fast. So, let's see. All right. So same as Hosea, little is known about Joel, other than what we have in of course the book of Joel, or the letter of Joel, however you want to look at that. Joel is mentioned in one New Testament verse, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But other than that, that's just about all that we know of him. He is the son of Pethuel. It was a common name. Let's see. The meaning of the name means Jehovah is God. Is the meaning of his name. Let's see. Does anybody know what he is referred to? The prophet of what? No? The prophet of Pentecost.
Oh, Pentecost?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he's known as the prophet of Pentecost.
Okay.
And we'll go in that. That's Acts chapter 2.
Yeah.
Let's see. Says Joel lived in Jerusalem, where the temple is. So he was prophesying to Judah, but he actually lived or grew up in Jerusalem. I got into the timeline on some of these books, and the only thing I can I can guess the reason why they've, like my study guide and even like the chronological Bible has put things in the order that they have, is because even with Hosea, Joel's the same way. I don't think there's uncertainty when the book was wrote. 830 is the number that most people go by. But there is some also, there's a time range of like 900 BC to 400 BC. Like there are people that actually think it was written a lot later than this 830 date. Very few think it was written much earlier, but some believe it could have been written as far out as 400 BC, which would have put it 400 years away from this 830 date. And so I don't know if that's why they order these books the way they do. But anyway, there you have it. So he would have, this would have been written. He would have been prophesying during the reign of Queen Athaliah. Did I get that right? Athaliah? Close? She can't say it either, so it must be right. Queen Athaliah and the early year of Joash's reign in Judah. Let's see. Sorry, I got a whole bunch of stuff here. I may have too much, but I didn't want to miss anything. Joel was the eighth. No, I'm sorry. This Joash was the 8th king of Judah. He was the king or the son of Ahaziah. I've been practicing. By Zibiah of Beersheba. Of course, this King Joash was 7 years old when he became king and reigned 40 years in Jerusalem from about 835 BC to 796 BC. So Joel would have been just at the beginning of Joash's reign. Joash, if we can remember, and we'll go back and actually dig in a little bit deeper with Joash. But Joash, of course, he was 7 when he was made king and reigned for about 40 years. The first part of Joash's reign, he was quite conservative, if you will, or in line with God's will, maybe is the better way to say that. He did away with high places. He did away with some of the idol worship that was going on at the time during his early reign. But then later on in his reign, after was it? What was that guy's name? Jehoiada. After Jehoiada died, Joash kind of fell off the face of the earth, and idolatry grew back. And then Joash, this king, was even guilty of killing the son of Jehoiada, Zechariah. So that is the king here. Let's see. So if Joash was 7, and sorry, I'll get my dates right here in just a minute. The years going backwards mess me up sometimes. Sorry. So 835. So he would have been 7. That would have been 12 years old. Am I getting that right? Yeah. So King Joash would have been like 12 years old when, if I'm not mistaken, when Joel prophesies to Judah. So they had a 12-year-old king. If that'll give you some idea about the context of what was going on there. Just imagine that today.
When I think about Joel, I think about the devastation. And I think it's in the 2nd chapter, but you've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, we'll go through that in great detail because it is
The rebellion or the departure, the destruction that has been caused by the sin.
Yeah. Absolutely. Prophet, we said that earlier. So he's prophet of the Pentecost. we'll get into that probably more next week than we do this week, and it may be in 2 weeks. But he was known as the prophet of Pentecost. So in the book of Joel, when you get to about chapter 2, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, chapter 2 actually is a great deal, has a great deal to do with the Lord coming, Jesus coming, and we'll get into that in detail. I don't want to get too far off of that. Sorry. Let's see. So the people here, kind of in the intro of Joel, I think it's correct to say that we're dropping into an already happening scene. In Joel, when Joel starts the book of Joel, they are already having famine that is caused by locust, drought, and fires, which is the result of, as Andy said, their sinful ways. And it's kind of like a shot across the bow, a warning shot by God to tell these people, hey, this is what I'm capable of. This is what will be coming to you if you don't get your life straight. And so God is giving them a warning, and it's a severe warning. I mean, imagine taking all your food supply, and it says, let me read it, because I think it's better read than me saying it. Not better, not probably. It absolutely is. Chapter 1, verse 4. Well, I'll back up to, I'll just read starting in 1. So, chapter 1 of Joel, it says, "The word of the Lord came to Joel, the son of Pethuel. Hear this, O elders, and listen, all inhabitants of the land. Has anything like this happened in your days, or in your father's days? Tell your sons about it, and let your sons tell their sons, and their sons the next generation." Verse 4, "What the gnawing locust has left, the swarming locust has eaten. And what the swarming locust has left, the creeping locust has eaten. And what the creeping locust has left, the stripping locust has eaten." I did not realize that there were that many different types of locusts. And I'm saying that sarcastically to some extent.
I think there is, and I found that interesting.
I didn't do a study on locusts. Let me say
I just looked up the locusts, and I thought it was unique, the fact that they're progressive, and I forget, one's a knallworm and one's a pot.
Is it like the different stages of their life? Is that what it is?
It's different bugs. It's like
it
a
is.
tomato worm and
Okay.
a cutworm, and one's not as bad as the other, but as it goes along, it gets totally worse. And the locusts, some of them crawl, some of them are worms, and some of them fly.
And what they were doing was they were literally, each one of them eating their part of these crops. One maybe the crop itself, one, the leaves that would have helped it renew itself. Then the stem and I don't know, all the different parts, but they were all eating different parts of these plants, these crops that these people had grown, to the extent that there was literally nothing left.
It depends on when you look at the dating of the book of the writer of Joel. The Babylonian captivity of the Philistines and the Edomites. The Edomites, of course, was the descendants of Esau.
Yep.
And they've always been a plague in the sight of Judah and Israel both, for that matter. But I was reading one particular point, and talking about there was an argument that these might not have been literal locusts. It might have been when the Assyrian army came in. The kings came in and got the best of the spoils. Then the captains of the armies came in and got the houses. And then the peasants came in and got the fields. And the last locusts that came through got everything else. And they were talking about the total destruction of the Assyrian captivity. And I don't know that I actually agree with that, but it goes to fit with this locust idea that as each wave of locusts came along, it got worse. And as each generation came along, it got worse. Do you remember in great-grandpa's day how they did this? Well, in grandpa's day, they come by and done this. Now look at the mess we're in now, son. He bears that line of thinking after the first part there. You're going to tell your sons, and your sons are going to tell their sons, and so forth. So we're looking at least 4 generations. And you look at the 4 different locusts. In the Assyrian captivity, when it destroyed the people of, when they took over, it came in waves. War came in the waves, according to history. And I thought that might have, I don't know whether that's the way of looking at Joel or not. But
I read that argument. I think the text points out that this is an actual figurative
I think
or a literal. I'm sorry, a literal.
I believe it was both crawling.
A literal event, and I think what's being told in chapter 1 in the first couple verses that we read is that basically this is one event that happened to these people. So we'll get into this study, but what's going on in Joel 2 is the Assyrian army, they have been fighting off this Assyrian army for some time.
And they're going to lose the battle.
They are going to lose, ultimately going to lose the battle. But what they have done was they have put so much work and effort into fighting off this Assyrian army, and it themselves. Hey, all the armory in the world, all the men in the world that you want to put up against the Assyrians means nothing, because you have forgotten me, and I'm going to remind you of me, and that's the locust. And that's what he's saying here in the first part of Joel. Is the indication is that this was such a huge event with these locusts. Not a swarm of locusts just coming through. We've seen that, where a swarm of locusts come through and they're gone. These locusts, again, 4 different types, completely devastating crops, down to, essentially, it doesn't say, but to the ground. There's nothing to grow back. There's nothing to produce. There's none of that. And what is being said here is, you need to tell all these generations, their sons and all these generations, of this one big great event that took place as a reminder to them of what God is capable of. But I did read that account that you're talking about, and on face value it seems very legitimate, but when you really get into
I think it was literal. Kyle, you think about it in my lifetime. How many people was alive on D-Day?
Well,
were you alive on D-Day?
No, there are not many people that were alive then alive now, yeah.
But
very few.
Don't you think as the generations pass, as my grandfather and great-grandfather and Merton Smith and others, they talked about those events and they lived it. Then it got to the next generation, it was kind of glamorized, and now it's kind of put in history books, and we kind of just gloss it over with a pretty thing. As the generation goes along, this sin, it wasn't too bad. And I think Joel reminds us, as he calls it to repentance, you make sure your children know just how bad it was.
Right.
You think about like World War I and II, we read about history books, we didn't live it. And how devastating it would have been.
Yeah, it's hard to know actually how hard that was, or how bad that was.
Yeah. The Lord has always used locusts to tree. Ain't gonna be nothing because of locusts. They always use the locusts somehow or another to punish them, to deprive them of food, and you get hungry, you do a lot of crazy stuff.
Yes, sir.
I never have like locusts. They're ugly.
Yeah.
They're creepy.
Aaron, did you have?
Yeah, my Bible reference is Deuteronomy 28:38. It says, "You shall bring out much seed to the field, but you will gather in little, for the locusts will consume it." You'll plant and cultivate.
That's what Ricky was just referring to, yeah.
And then it says again I think this is literally put, because in Joel 2:25 it says, locusts, and then stripping locusts and the gnawing locusts, and my great army.
Food would have been to them. I don't think food is to us the same as it would have been to them. Food carries I think food carried a different weight for them. Does that make sense? Food's important to us. I don't like to miss a meal, I assure you. But food is readily available to us.
They had no way of preserving it.
They didn't have, right, yeah. We have food, you can call it that, but we have food that lasts 25 years.
Yeah.
25 years. That's crazy. I don't know if you'd call it food, substance,
Yeah.
a hole filler, but I mean, it is food.
If they
You know?
lost a year's crop, the year's crop.
You're done.
That's it.
Yeah.
Really precious and worship like, something not really affect your livelihood, living, just living, because you lost your crop.
And what is the number one thing that gets us to come to God?
Disaster.
Hardship.
Or, yeah, yes.
Every time.
Mhm.
I don't care if you believe in God or not. If you're faced with a hardship that's hard enough, your first response is going to be to pray to God. It might get bad. You might cry out for your mama or for your daddy, or you might cry out for whoever. But it's almost like a human instinct, like a natural thing to cry out to God for help, whether you believe in Him or not, you know. And there will be some people who say, well, no, that's not true. But
Oh,
yes, they depict it in movies and all that, but I'm not talking about movies. I'm talking about real life.
I remember here when the first Iraq war was, or the first one under Bush Senior. There was some scare about they had nuclear weapons.
The Gulf War, right, yeah.
Not Iraq.
It's all right.
Iraq.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
They had nuclear weapons, they had all kinds of stuff, and people were scared.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
This building filled up for 2 or 3 summers.
Really?
Yes. And then the scare wore off and
Right.
people.
Yeah.
You think after 9/11, I was told, and I have no evidence, statistically, there was more people in places of worship on the Sunday after 9/11 than there had been in the history of the country.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's
Hardship.
all about God.
I mean,
Hardship works. I mean, I think that's one of the wisdom of God in using those things. I mean, you're wiping out a country's entire crops, and they don't have food just put back. MREs stacked up somewhere. Hey, we can eat this year. I mean, you're going to starve these people out. Is what you're doing. So
you look at with COVID hit, people began to hoard up food because it wasn't going to be there.
Yeah.
And now the chicken eggs are $6 a dozen. I saw something the other day where you can't buy mayonnaise because mayonnaise is made out of chicken eggs, and it's up. You know, you better hoard up some mayonnaise. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost foolish, but people take their food seriously.
yeah, they do.
I would say more than hardship, fear.
Fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Absolutely. So the other thing that I missed that I want to get back to. So we talked about Joash, and I don't know if I finished that. I wanted to spend some time on these, but the other one is this wicked queen Athaliah. Do you know that Judah had a queen?
No,
Did you know that?
no.
You didn't know that Judah had a queen? Guess what? I didn't either. Never heard it in my life.
Where are you reading that stuff?
Do you know that?
Is it in your workbook?
It will, yeah. Okay. So let's go to. Let me see. Where's the best place to start? Give me just a minute. 2 Kings chapter 11. I never, ever heard that Judah actually had a queen. And I'm not talking about, we talked about in the house Jezebel. Well, Jezebel actually wasn't, she was a queen, but not the queen. She was married to a king. Now, she just about maybe ran the country, and that was our discussion at home. But there was actually a king in office, if you will. What did I say? 2 Kings chapter 11. Sorry, I'll get there. And I did want to spend a little bit of time on this because I didn't know it. I didn't have a clue that a woman actually reigned over Judah. I think six years. I think is how long she reigned. Let's see. Chapter 11. Oh yeah, here you go. All right, I'm going to skip around a little bit, but I'm going to read the.
You say Kings, what?
2 Kings chapter 11. All right. 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 1. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she rose and destroyed all the royal offspring. But Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Horam, sister of Ahijah, I'm saying it wrong, but anyway, sorry, took Joash, the son of Ahijah, and stole him from among the king's sons who were being put to death, and placed him and his nurse in the bedroom. So they hid him from Athaliah, and he was not put to death. So he was hidden with her in her house of the Lord 6 years, while Athaliah reigned over the land. All right. Let's see. Well, I'll just read this real quick. All right, we're going to continue in 2 Kings chapter 11, verse 4. Now in the seventh year of Jehoiada sent and brought the captains of hundreds of the Karites and of the guard, and brought them to him in the house of the Lord. Then he made a covenant with them, and put them under oath in the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son. He commanded them, saying, this is Joash, the kid that was saved from Athaliah. All right. And he made them swear an oath, or put them under oath in the house of the Lord, and showed them the king's son, Joash. He commanded them, saying, this is the thing that you shall do. 1/3 of you who come in on the Sabbath and keep watch over the king's house. 1/3 also shall be at the gate, sir, and 1/3 at the gate behind the guards. Shall keep watch over the house for defense. 2 parts of you, even all of you who go out on the Sabbath, shall also keep watch over the house of the Lord for the king. That is this little boy, 7 years old or whatever he is right now, 6. Then you shall surround the king, each with his weapons in his hand, and whoever comes within the ranks shall be put to death. So they're setting up this army of this guard to protect Joash, who is the rightful king or heir of the throne here, that has been taken over by this Athaliah. So the captains of the hundreds did according to all that Jehoiada the priest commanded. And each one of them took his men who were to come in on the Sabbath with those who were to go out on the Sabbath, and came to Jehoiada the priest. The priest gave to the captains of the hundreds the spears and shields that had been King David's, which were in the house of the Lord. Did y'all know that? They stored weapons in the house of the Lord? I never knew that.
Behind the most holy, even to that.
Yeah, right.
In storage behind the holy holies.
Then he brought the king's son out and put a crown on him, and gave him the testimony. And they made him king and anointed him, and they clapped their hands and said, long live the king. So they're putting the rightful heir of the throne in the throne, or on the throne, is what they're doing right now. And we can read, I have it wrote down somewhere, but this is the way you actually, what's the word? Write it down. This is the way you actually make the king official. It has to be here in this way, and that's what they're doing. Coronation, yes, thank you. Yeah, so this is the proper way to coordinate a king. When Athaliah heard the noise of the guard and of the people, she came to the people in the house of the Lord. She looked, and behold, the king was standing by the pillar, according to the custom, with the captains and the trumpeters beside the king. And all the people of the land rejoiced and blew trumpets. Then Athaliah tore her clothes and cried, treason, treason. And Jehoiada, imagine that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I lost my place. And then Jehoiada, the priest, commanded the captains of the hundreds who were appointed over the army, and said to them, bring her out between the ranks, and whoever follows her put to death with the sword. So they're going to take her out. Whoever follows her to protect her, they're going to put them to death. For the priest said, let her not be put to death in the house of the Lord. So they seized her. And when they arrived at the horses' entrance of the king's house, she was put to death there. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and all the people, that is Joash, the rightful king, that they would be the Lord's people, also between the king and the people. And all the people of the land went to the house of Baal and tore it down. His altars and his images they broke in pieces thoroughly, and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priests appointed officers over the house of the Lord. He took the captains of hundreds and the Kerites and the guards of all the people of the land, and they brought the king down from the house of the Lord and came by the way of the gate of the guards to the king's house. And he sat on the throne of the kings. So all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, for they had put Athaliah to death with the sword in the king's house. Jehoash, they also call him Jehoash, was 7 years old when he became king. A queen of Judah. That's pretty significant. I've never heard that in my short little time as a Christian. Never. And the Book of Kings is like one of my favorite books. I go to it. I have stuff outlined in the Book of Kings all over the place. And I never even knew that.
Was Athaliah the mother? She was the mother of
She was the mother of the son. Let's see, go back.
Jehoaz?
Must have been the mother of the former king.
She was the mother of,
Oh, Ahaziah.
yes.
Oh, and he got killed by
He got killed. Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So when she seen that, she took her vengeance, tried to kill all the nobles so that nobody could come back and take the throne later. Well, she missed one.
I didn't realize that he was in hiding since he was 1. Like, he was with his nursemaid.
Yeah, or since he was young. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he must have been with her since he was
Oh yeah,
born.
he had no. That's right. Must have been a really, really smart 7-year-old. I mean, because you would think they probably could have waited longer, maybe. I don't know what was. It doesn't say anything else that's going on there. But what I will point out is this. So Joash was very conservative, or was very in line with God's will. As long as this Jehoiada, this priest, was alive. As soon as the priest died, or was out of the picture, now Joash goes the other way. So who was really running the country? It looks that way. I mean, we don't know that for sure, but you just imagine a 7-year-old on the throne.
Yeah, he had that.
They would take your choice.
John is 4. I had a boy that was 7 once. Fixing to have another one. I'm maybe not the most experienced person in the world with that, but I have a little bit of experience.
Yeah.
I was 7, which I don't remember much of that, but I can imagine what I was like when I was 7. There is no way I'm making any decisions or even know how to make decisions for an entire country or entire land, much less to be in line with God's will. There's no way. So I think it's safe to say that probably Jehoiada was doing most of the decision making, or at least helping Joash make the right decisions. Now Joash, eventually he became a man. And it's, I almost think, I wonder, did he continue? Because at some point maybe you would think, well, I'm a grown man now, I can make my own decisions. I don't need you, Jehoiada. He didn't do that. He waited until he was gone. But he probably looked up to Jehoiada as a father figure.
Right.
So as to not embarrass him or to honor him, he probably continued making or taking the advice and counsel of Jehoiada. But as soon as he was out of the picture, that ended. And he, ma'am?
It was easier for him too.
That's right, yeah.
Really.
Yeah. So yes, there was a queen over Judah for 6 years, which was news to me. All right. Let me make sure I got I think we got Joash and Athaliah figured out. So that the important part of that is one, when I read it, of course, realizing that was going on, it was significant to me. She was the only female. We talked about Deborah at the house, but Deborah wasn't a queen. She was a judge, right? And she was a judge. Why? There was no man that would
Qualify or take.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So she wasn't a queen. She wasn't actually on the throne. She didn't run the country. Other than Deborah, who else would you even maybe consider? There's not another female, is there? I don't think there is. I think Deborah is a woman figure in a role of authority, if you will, or
Jezebel, like you said.
oh yeah, Jezebel. Yeah, that's
She
true.
ran the house.
On the other side of the spectrum is Jezebel. That's right.
Yeah.
And she did run the house.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
She ran
That's
the
right.
riches.
So, but anyway, Athaliah, whom I've never heard of, but until this week, was running Judah for 6 years.
Was Athaliah the mother of Joash?
No, she was the mother of.
Oh, so she was his grandmother. Am I right? Because
She would have been related somehow.
her son was Ahaziah.
Her son was Ahaziah. He was killed.
Joash's father.
So she went and killed all the other nobles so
didn't
she could
rise
take
to
the
his
throne.
son.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's go back to Joel. All right. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I'm not even going to get through with this part. I don't think, right? We talked about Joel being the prophet of Pentecost. We talked about the locust. Let's see. Why do I have that? One of the other significant parts of chapter 1 that I have highlighted here, and we'll probably revisit most of this next week too, because I'm kind of just using this as an intro. Chapter 1, verse 13, it says, gird yourselves, this is Joel now, chapter 1, sorry. Gird yourselves with sackcloth and lament, O priest, wail, O ministers of the altar. Come, spend the night in sackcloth, O ministers of my God. For the grain offering and the drink of the food from them, the way that they ate and were nourished. But he's also, by taking these grains away, we're taking away their ability to offer certain things. The wine offering, all those things, those are also gone. It says, verse 14, consecrate a fast, proclaim a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land to the house of the Lord your God, and cry out to the Lord. Alas, for the day of the Lord is near, and it will come as destruction from the Almighty. Has not food been cut off before our eyes, gladness and joy from the house of our God? The seeds shrivel under their clods, the storehouses are desolate, the barns are torn down, for the grain is dried up. How the beasts groan, the herds of cattle wander aimlessly, because there is no pasture for them, even the flocks of sheep suffer. To you, O Lord, I cry, for fire has devoured the pastures of the wilderness, and the flame has burned up all the trees of the field. For even the beasts of the field pant for you. For the water brooks are dried up, and fire has devoured the pastures of the wilderness. So, again, we see this picture of even the animals suffering through these events, which would have also been significant because they were also a food source for these people. And then also, too, they would have been a tool for sacrifice at some point. And I don't know how. Well, I can just about guarantee you that continued drought or malnutrition would affect the breeding ability of the animals, which would also affect the ability to have the certain animals that you would need for certain sacrifices. So, depending on how long that went on. But the picture that's being painted here is very grim. God has taken their food source away. Fire, that's one of the things wasn't mentioned previously, but fire has also consumed the fields and the trees. these brooks or these water brooks are dried up. And it says that even the animals pant, even the beasts of the field pant for you, that is, panting for God. So everything is miserable and hungry, thirsty. Okay, so that's all I have for week 1. Are there anything else to add from anybody, Mr. Ricky?
It's just a pretty bleak situation, and like we were talking about a while ago, people get afraid or that they get hungry, usually they'll turn to the Lord.
Yes.
How bad does it have to get for this bunch?
And you can talk about in the day of the Lord. In the day of the Lord. Do we face the same day of the Lord?
Maybe. So, and that's a discussion that we'll probably have next week or the following week, is this day of the Lord. So the day of the Lord, or this when we get farther into Joel, what will become obvious is that Joel is actually going to change from talking about the destruction that these people were in, and I think it's to a point, to be able to get to the point that he gets to where he starts talking about Jesus.
The day of the Lord has two applications in that scripture. It's either bad or good. It's no in between.
That's true too.
The day of the Lord is either judgment or blessings.
That's true too.
It's not average or mediocre. The day of the Lord is when God has had enough, or God says, well done.
Yeah, and that comes through like chapter 3 of Joel. Chapter 3. Yeah, I think chapter 3, somewhere there about chapter 3, a little bit before chapter 3. Basically, this idea of you being able to make a choice. You're going to have a choice. You're going to be judged for your actions, and you'll be able to make a choice, whether you're on the good side of that or the bad side of that.
And I think we see the day of the Lord coming on the day of Pentecost.
That's all I have for tonight. If anybody else has anything. If not,
333, 333.
333. Walker, will you close us out in prayer here in a minute?
Yes, sir.
All right. Here in just a minute, we'll sing 333 Jesus will give you rest. Most everybody was in here tonight, but we talked about this destruction, and this is kind of a way into we call them invitations, but what's the word I'm missing? I'll think of it here in a minute. Sorry, I can't think of the word. But we talked tonight about this idea in the first chapter of Joel. This picture of destruction is painted for us, and we talked extensively tonight about how God uses hardship and fear, or maybe not that He uses it, but that hardship and fear often causes, especially the Lord's people, to almost immediately, if they're not in line with God, to almost like put themselves in line with God, or at least to start to put themselves in line with God, to cry out to God, to ask God for help, support, food, whatever it is. They definitely would have been hungry here in the first part of Joel after this destruction. And oftentimes in my life, I'll say that, I won't speak for everyone else, but oftentimes in my life, I'm the same way. Things are going well, and my life is very good. My life is really good. Almost sometimes I think too good for my own good, if you would, if that makes sense. And it almost sometimes gets in the way of my relationship with God because things are so good. But there are things that happen throughout my life. Even while things are good, things can also be bad. And a lot of the times those things are a direct result of how good it is, because you get comfortable, you get complacent, and you don't really, because things are so good, you no longer have to remember how things come to you, or maybe you don't even remember how bad things could be, or how bad things maybe used to be. And so you kind of just get caught in this fairy tale of, hey, everything is just great and good, and maybe sometimes I lose sight of I don't stay focused on God like I should. And that's exactly what's going on here in the book of Job. These people have lost sight of God to the extent that God decided to destroy all their crops, basically to starve them out. And not just them, but their animals too, as a way to get their attention. God, I think, I'm a firm believer that God works the same way today. I didn't write it down. What's the verse? Romans, let me get there. Sorry, give me just a minute. But anyway, it's this idea of punishment and not... Basically, if you weren't punished, you would be an illegitimate son. Is that Romans?
You got me.
What is it, Peter? Sorry, I got it wrong, so I think it's important to go there. Otherwise, I feel like I did something wrong. No. Oh, no. Hebrews. I'm sorry. Hebrews, chapter 12. I knew it was Romans or Hebrews. It says, you have not resisted to the point of shedding blood. This is chapter 12. Striving against sin, and you have forgotten the exhortation which is addressed to you as sons. Verse 7, it is for the discipline that you endure. God deals with you as sons. For what son is there whom the Father does not discipline? I believe that God disciplines us today in the here and now. And I believe that discipline can come through all kinds of means and ways, And I'm not sitting here trying to say that I know what God does or how He makes decisions. I'm not doing that. But what I know in my own life is I have seen circumstances in my own life that point to that. And I think biblically we can say that aware of those things. Or at least maybe be aware of the possibility of those things in our lives. Maybe we're going through hardship because we're being put in a Job situation to be tested. But there are it's clearly decisions, but maybe it's a result of maybe God trying to save me from myself, if you will. The point of this is that we don't have to go through that. We don't have to get to the point where God sends a swarm of locusts, I don't know, maybe even however you want to look at that, 4 swarms of locusts to eat not just the fruit on the plant, but the plant itself. We don't have to get to that point. We can stay faithful and true to God every day. We can avoid these things. And I think that's one of the big parts of these minor prophets. They're lessons for us to learn and to apply in our lives. Literally, not figuratively, but literally. This study has been really good for me. A really good reminder of those things. We can circumvent God's wrath by being faithful to God and living faithful lives. And I think that is the entire point of the Bible, is to give us everything that we need, examples, proof, evidence, all those things, so that we can say without any doubt that there is a God. He did send His Son to die on the cross for our sins. And we can be faithful to God. We can live faithful lives. That doesn't mean we're perfect people, but that does mean it is possible to remain faithful to God all your days. And if we study and we work hard, we can achieve that. So if you're in need of anything tonight, prayers, help, anything, there are plenty of people here who can help you. We'll sing 333, Jesus Will Give You Rest, and then Walker, you will close us out with a prayer, please. And thank you.
Will you come with your poor broken heart, burden and sin oppressed? feet of your Savior and Lord. Jesus will give you rest. Oh, happy rest, sweet happy rest. Jesus will give you rest. Oh, why won't you come in simple trusting faith? Jesus will give you rest. Will you come? Will you come? How he pleads with you now. Fly to his loving breast. And whatever your sin or your sorrow may be, Jesus will give you rest. Oh, happy rest, sweet happy rest. Jesus will give you rest. Oh, why won't you come in simple trusting faith? Jesus will give you rest.
This very good. Dear God, we thank you for this time we can come together to worship you. Thank you for the lessons that were taught to us. We pray for everyone who's sick. I say, so, Christ, we pray.
Amen.